Hello! This is part 2, Standardized Tests. Question: what are the strengths and benefits of a standardized test? This is a rhetorical question, by the way. You can answer that by yourself. What are the limitations? I have an answer. Please call me. All right, some ideas. The values, and they do have a value. Every standardized test, it's a tool. Every tool in education, its effectiveness is highly dependent on the teacher or the school using the tool. Now, here are the values, can be given to a large group, provides a general sense of a student's strengths and weakness. A general, it does not describe specific, but a general. Can be used with other measures, should be used with other measures. You should never, ever use just a standardized test to describe a student. Ever! Can show certain patterns over time. Oh yes, when you look in files, you see certain strengths like in math or something over time. But you never look at one test and make any determination about a student based on one test. They are relatively cheap and easy to score. They're easier to score than they are cheap. They are expensive. It's hard to score well by accident. Provides a general sense of students' knowledge and can be used to compare students to a relative group norm or criteria to see about how they compare with other students. If that's your idea of a good time. Some of the limitations. Describe students only in terms of number. Here's your number. This is what you are. This is how far you fall away from average, you student, you. Describes performance, but does not describe any remediation. There you are. There's your number. It doesn't tell the parent or the child what he or she could be doing to improve. They measure a very narrow type of thinking. Robert Sternberg and Howard Gardner as well says they use mostly vocabulary and logical deductive thinking. The type of thinking, not the knowledge, but the type of thinking used in these tests is very narrow. Does not reflect the type of thinking used to solve problems in the real world. You can score poorly by accident. Have a bad day, didn't have breakfast, a bully beats you up before the test? Uh-oh, poor score for you. Does not reflect the type of problem solving that occurs outside a school environment. And here's the thing, gang. Eventually our students have to leave school, and there's no standardized tests out there. There are all sorts of ill-structured and complex problems, but yet we put so much emphasis on these stinking tests that do not reflect reality. Now, I'm not saying that standardized tests should not be used. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is they should always be used with other types of measures, products, or performances in describing learning, in describing a child, in describing the effectiveness of a school. The strongest predictor of these types of tests is how well a student will do on a similar type of test. They predict students' ability to do equally well on an achievement test. So achievement test scores predict the ability of students to score well on achievement tests. Do you see the problem with this? Teachers often, and I shouldn't say often, I should say most often, feel forced to teach to the test. Who wouldn't if these test scores are going to be published? That leads to a very narrowed curriculum. It leads to teaching strategies that do not reflect research-based practices. It's drill and skill and drill and kill. Their exclusionary use creates this one-dimensional teaching and learning experience. It's going to be on the test, so by golly, we're going to do it this way so I don't look like an idiot when these scores are published. You can increase scores on standardized tests, but you're going to kill learning in the process. And that's what's happening today in this hyper-testing environment. Spend an hour a day practicing test-taking strategies. Hey, that's not so dumb. But think of that hour that is wasted. You could use sample questions similar to those found on standardized tests, and they even have booklets and computer programs, Test Best and these sorts of things, that you can do that. Imagine, instead of learning about things, about reading good books, about writing, you're going to practice, and I've seen schools do this, spend an hour going over these practice booklets. This is madness. Now, if I had a test coming up, I would probably spend a week or two beforehand doing this. That's not out of line. But to make that part of your curriculum, where does that fit into the scope and sequence of things? And you can teach test taking using thinking frames. A thinking frame is a cognitive process broken down into steps. Here are 2 possible thinking frames. This is for story problems. This is for math problems. I would teach these explicitly in large group. I'd have them do them in pairs or small groups so they could hear each other think. Very explicit. And then I'd have them do it independently. And these are not bad things to teach. Thinking skills are always good because they eventually internalize it. However, if that becomes the curriculum, it is a bad thing. All right, this has been a short rant on standardized tests. Again, standardized tests are not bad. They are an important educational tool. What is bad is when they are the only thing used to assess teachers, to assess schools, to assess learning. People that only want to use standardized tests, or who want to make decisions about schools or teachers, or who measure the quality of a school or a teacher based only on standardized tests, that shows that they have not read anything related to teaching and learning and best practice. It shows ignorance. So don't show ignorance. You can tell I get a little worked up about this subject.